11 years after a casino heir vanished at a farewell party in Phoenix in 1996, a hotel cleaner finds something that changes everything. Asterisk asterisk. The morning sun blazed over the Arizona desert as Maria Gonzalez wheeled her cleaning cart down the carpeted hallway of the Silver Mirage Casino Resort. It was March 18, 2007, and after 25 years of cleaning Phoenix hotel rooms, Maria had developed an instinct for spotting things others missed. Room 3142 awaited her attention. The weekend's high-stakes poker tournament had ended, leaving behind the usual aftermath of wealthy gamblers and their extravagant habits. Maria inserted her master key, expecting nothing more than champagne stains and scattered poker chips. The suite appeared pristine at first glance. Silk curtains hung perfectly. The king-sized bed was made with military precision, and the marble surfaces gleamed. But Maria's trained eye caught something amiss. The massive mahogany dresser sat slightly crooked against the far wall. As she began her methodical cleaning routine, Maria decided to straighten the heavy furniture. It took considerable effort to shift the dresser even a few inches. Behind it, wedged tightly between the wall and one of the dresser legs, something caught the light. A brown leather wallet. Maria's hands trembled as she opened it carefully. Inside was an Arizona driver's license for Jonathan Sterling, age 19, issued in 1995. The address listed was in Scottsdale, one of Phoenix's most affluent neighborhoods. But it was the photograph that made Maria's breath catch in her throat. She had worked at the Silver Mirage since 1982. She remembered the Sterling family well. Richard Sterling owned the Silver Mirage Casino Resort empire. His son Jonathan had disappeared during a private celebration in September 1996. The story had dominated Phoenix headlines for months. Search parties combed the Sonoran Desert. Private investigators followed leads across 3 states. Nothing was ever discovered. Maria examined the wallet's contents more thoroughly. Behind Jonathan's license was a business card for Desert Capital Ventures LLC, with a handwritten phone number scrawled across the back. There was also a room key card, but not for the Silver Mirage. This one belonged to the Flamingo Palace Casino across Phoenix. Her supervisor, Carmen Rodriguez, arrived within minutes of Maria's frantic phone call. "Carmen, you need to see this," Maria whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's that Sterling boy's wallet. The one who disappeared all those years ago." Carmen's face went pale as she studied the wallet's contents. "Maria, don't touch anything else. We're calling the police immediately." Detective Jake Harrison of the Phoenix Police Department's Major Crimes Unit received the call at 9:47 a.m. Harrison had been a rookie detective when Jonathan Sterling vanished in 1996. Now, as a seasoned investigator specializing in cold cases, he understood the significance of what Maria had discovered. "Where exactly did you find this wallet?" Harrison asked Maria as he photographed the evidence. "Wedged behind that dresser," Maria replied, pointing to the heavy furniture. "It was pushed so far back that no regular cleaning would have found it. Someone deliberately hid it there." Harrison bagged the wallet as evidence and requested the hotel's registration records for room 3142, dating back to September 1996. Carmen Rodriguez shook her head apologetically. "Detective, our computer system only maintains records for 5 years. But I can tell you that 3142 has always been reserved for VIP guests. High roller suite usually booked months in advance." Harrison made detailed notes. The wallet's discovery after 11 years wasn't random. Someone with access to this specific room had hidden Jonathan Sterling's personal effects, and that someone knew the wallet wouldn't be discovered during routine housekeeping. At his downtown Phoenix office, Richard Sterling received Harrison's call with a mixture of hope and dread. At 71, the casino magnate still commanded respect throughout Arizona's gambling industry, but the loss of his son had left visible scars on his weathered face. "Detective Harrison, I remember you from the original investigation," Richard said, his voice steady but strained. "You're telling me Maria found Jonathan's wallet in one of my own hotel rooms?" "That's correct, Mr. Sterling. Room 3142 specifically. We need to discuss who had access to that room around the time of Jonathan's disappearance." Richard was quiet for several heartbeats. Detective, I've never stopped believing we'd find answers about Jonathan. I've maintained 3 private investigators on retainer for 11 years. Every possible lead has been explored. Mr. Sterling, can you meet me at headquarters this afternoon? I'd like to review the original case file and discuss what this wallet discovery might mean. I'll be there at 2 p.m. sharp. Harrison spent the morning immersed in the 1996 case files. Jonathan Sterling had attended a farewell celebration on September 12, 1996, marking his acceptance to Arizona State University's prestigious business program. The party was held at a sprawling Scottsdale mansion owned by family friend and casino executive Marcus Webb. According to witness statements, Jonathan left the celebration around 11:30 p.m., telling several guests he was meeting someone at a casino for late-night business discussions. He drove his own vehicle, a 1995 red Corvette convertible. The car was discovered 3 days later in the parking lot of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, with Jonathan's luggage still in the trunk and his plane ticket to Denver dated September 14th untouched. The original investigation had focused on kidnapping theories. The Sterling family's immense wealth made ransom the most logical motive. However, no demands were ever received. Airport security footage showed Jonathan's Corvette arriving at 12:23 a.m. on September 13th, but cameras never captured Jonathan himself. Harrison reviewed the evidence inventory meticulously. Jonathan's car keys were found in the ignition. His cell phone sat on the passenger seat with a dead battery. Credit cards showed no activity after September 12th. Bank accounts remained completely untouched. The investigation had interviewed 67 people who attended Webb's farewell party. All provided solid alibis and passed polygraph examinations. Marcus Webb, the host, had been especially cooperative, providing guest lists, catering receipts, and a detailed timeline of the evening's events. Harrison made a note to re-interview Webb. The wallet discovery in room 3142 suggested Jonathan had been at the Silver Mirage Casino, not just meeting someone at a casino, as witnesses reported. At exactly 2 p.m., Richard Sterling arrived at police headquarters. He looked precisely as Harrison remembered from 11 years earlier. Tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, radiating the quiet authority that came from building a casino empire from nothing. But the grief remained unmistakable in his pale blue eyes. Detective, in 11 years, this is the first tangible evidence we've had, Richard said, settling into the chair across from Harrison's desk. Jonathan's wallet in my own hotel. Someone placed it there deliberately. Harrison showed Richard photographs of the wallet's contents. Do you recognize this business card for Desert Capital Ventures, LLC? Richard studied the card carefully, turning it over to examine the handwritten phone number. I know most investment companies in Phoenix and Las Vegas. Desert Capital Ventures doesn't ring any bells, but this handwritten number could be significant. We're tracing that number. It was disconnected years ago, but phone company records should tell us who owned it in 1996. Richard examined the Flamingo Palace room keycard next. This suggests Jonathan went to the Flamingo Palace after leaving Marcus Webb's party. But why? Jonathan knew everyone in the casino business through me. If he had business at the Flamingo Palace, he would have mentioned it. Harrison leaned forward. Mr. Sterling, I need to ask specifically about room 3142. Who had access to that suite in September 1996? Richard pulled out his phone and dialed his executive assistant. Jennifer, I need you to research our archived booking records. Room 3142 for September 1996. Who was registered there around September 12th through 14th? While waiting for the information, Harrison continued his questioning. Was Jonathan involved in any casino business dealings at the time of his disappearance? Jonathan was starting his freshman year at ASU. He worked part-time in our accounting department during summer breaks, but he had no independent business relationships. I was very protective about that. Jonathan was brilliant, but he was still only 19 years old. Richard's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He answered, listened intently, then looked at Harrison with a grave expression. "Detective, room 3142 was registered to Marcus Webb from September 10th through September 15th, 1996. Marcus hosted Jonathan's farewell party." Harrison felt the case shift dramatically. Marcus Webb had never mentioned booking a room at the Silver Mirage during the original investigation. "Mr. Sterling, why would Marcus Webb need a hotel room? Doesn't he live in the Phoenix area?" "Marcus lives in Paradise Valley, maybe 25 minutes from the Silver Mirage. There would be no legitimate reason for him to book a hotel room unless—" Richard paused, his face darkening. "Unless he was planning something that required complete privacy and immediate access to the casino floor." Harrison made detailed notes. The discovery of Jonathan's wallet in Marcus Webb's hotel room 11 years after the disappearance couldn't be coincidental. Webb had lied during the original investigation by omission. "Mr. Sterling, I need you to think carefully. Did Marcus Webb have any business dealings that might have required Jonathan's involvement? Anything that could explain why Jonathan's wallet ended up in Webb's hotel room?" Richard was silent for a long moment, his fingers drumming on the desk. "Detective, Marcus Webb was my business partner in several ventures outside the Silver Mirage. He had access to confidential information about casino operations, high-roller activities, security procedures. If Marcus was involved in Jonathan's disappearance, he would have known exactly how to avoid detection." Harrison realized the case was about to become exponentially more complex. Marcus Webb wasn't just a family friend who hosted parties. He was Richard Sterling's business partner with insider knowledge of casino security and operations. "Mr. Sterling, I need complete records of your business relationships with Marcus Webb. I also need you to avoid contacting Webb until we've had a chance to investigate further. Detective Harrison, if Marcus Webb hurt my son, I want him arrested immediately. Sir, we need to build an airtight case. Jonathan's wallet is crucial evidence, but we need to establish how it got there and why. Webb has had 11 years to cover his tracks." As Richard Sterling left police headquarters, Harrison began planning his investigation strategy. The wallet discovery had transformed a cold missing person case into an active homicide investigation. Marcus Webb had serious questions to answer. That evening, Harrison spent hours reviewing every detail of Marcus Webb's involvement in the original investigation. Webb had been interviewed 3 times in September 1996, each time as a cooperative witness providing helpful information about Jonathan's final evening. According to Webb's original statements, the farewell party concluded around 11 p.m. Jonathan had personally thanked Webb for hosting and mentioned meeting someone at a casino for important business discussions. Webb claimed he went to bed immediately after the last guest departed and had no further contact with Jonathan. Harrison found Webb's business address in the case files. Webb Development Corporation, occupying offices in a prestigious Phoenix high-rise. Webb was listed as a real estate development consultant specializing in casino and entertainment properties. The next morning, Harrison called Webb's office. A receptionist answered professionally. "Webb Development Corporation, how may I assist you?" "This is Detective Harrison with Phoenix Police Department. I need to schedule an interview with Marcus Webb regarding a cold case investigation." "I'm sorry, Detective, but Mr. Webb is in meetings all day. Could you call back tomorrow?" "Ma'am, this is a homicide investigation. I need to speak with Mr. Webb today. Please have him return my call within 2 hours." Harrison hung up and immediately drove to Webb's office building. He wanted to observe Webb's reaction when confronted with new evidence about Jonathan's disappearance. Webb Development Corporation occupied the entire 18th floor of a gleaming glass tower with panoramic views of the Phoenix skyline. Harrison approached the reception desk and displayed his badge. "Detective Harrison, Phoenix Police. I'm here to see Marcus Webb." The receptionist, a woman in her 40s, looked visibly nervous. "Detective, Mr. Webb asked me to inform you that he's consulting with his attorney and cannot speak without legal representation present." Harrison noted the timing. Webb's immediate request for legal counsel after a single phone call suggested consciousness of guilt. Innocent witnesses typically cooperated with police without requiring attorneys. When did Mr. Webb contact his attorney? Immediately after your call this morning, Detective. Harrison left his business card. Please tell Mr. Webb that he needs to contact me within 24 hours to schedule an interview. If he fails to cooperate, I'll obtain a warrant. From Webb's office building, Harrison drove directly to the Flamingo Palace Casino. Jonathan's wallet contained a Flamingo Palace room keycard, and casino security should have electronic records of that keycard's usage from September 1996. The Flamingo Palace security office occupied a windowless basement level beneath the casino floor. Harrison met with Security Director Robert Chen, a 15-year veteran of casino security operations. Detective, we maintain comprehensive electronic records of all room key card access for 10 years minimum. If this card was used in September 1996, we should have the data in our archived systems. Chun entered the key card number into his computer terminal. After several minutes of searching through archived databases, he located the relevant record. This key card was issued for room 847 on September 12, 1996. Guest registration shows Marcus Webb as the primary cardholder. Harrison felt the case solidifying around Webb. Marcus Webb had hotel rooms at both the Silver Mirage and the Flamingo Palace on the night Jonathan disappeared. Can you determine what time this key card was last used? Chun consulted his records. Last recorded access was 1:43 a.m. on September 13, 1996. No further usage after that timestamp. I need copies of all security footage from September 12th and 13th, 1996, specifically covering room 847 and the main hotel lobby. Chun checked his retention records and shook his head apologetically. Detective, we only maintained security footage for 3 years at that time. The 1996 footage was destroyed in 1999, according to our data retention policies. Harrison made extensive notes. Webb had booked rooms at 2 different casinos on the night of Jonathan's disappearance. The Flamingo Palace room key was in Jonathan's possession when he vanished, suggesting Jonathan went to the Flamingo Palace after leaving Webb's party. Back at police headquarters, Harrison contacted the phone company to trace the handwritten number from Jonathan's wallet. Southwest Bell customer service confirmed the number belonged to a payphone located in the Flamingo Palace casino lobby in 1996. The evidence was connecting systematically. Jonathan left Webb's party, drove to the Flamingo Palace casino, used Webb's room key to access room 847, and somehow encountered Webb again. Jonathan's wallet ended up hidden in Webb's room at the Silver Mirage, suggesting he was taken there against his will. Harrison's phone rang. The caller identified himself as attorney Michael Richardson, representing Marcus Webb. Detective Harrison, my client would like to schedule an interview to discuss the Sterling case. When would be convenient? Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at my office. I should mention that Mr. Webb is extremely concerned about these new developments and wants to cooperate fully with your investigation. Harrison doubted Webb's sincerity but agreed to the meeting. Webb's attorney was probably coaching him on how to explain the hotel room registrations and wallet discovery. That afternoon, Harrison drove to Scottsdale to interview Maria Gonzalez more thoroughly. Maria lived in a modest adobe home near the Silver Mirage Casino where she had worked for over 2 decades. Maria, when you found the wallet, did anything else seem unusual about room 3142? Any signs that someone had hidden other items there? Maria thought carefully before responding. Detective, that room has always felt different. The housekeeping staff talked about it among ourselves. The furniture seemed heavier than in other rooms, like it had been moved and repositioned many times over the years. Did you ever see Marcus Webb at the Silver Mirage? Oh yes, Mr. Webb was there frequently. He had regular meetings with Mr. Sterling, usually in the executive offices. But after Jonathan disappeared, I never saw Mr. Webb again. Not once in 11 years. This was significant. Webb had been a regular visitor to the Silver Mirage until Jonathan's disappearance, then completely stopped coming. His absence suggested guilt or fear of discovery. Harrison spent the evening preparing for his interview with Webb. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Webb had hotel rooms at 2 casinos on the night of the disappearance. Jonathan possessed Webb's room key, and Jonathan's wallet was found hidden in Webb's other hotel room 11 years later. The detective reviewed Webb's original statements for inconsistencies. Webb claimed Jonathan left his party to meet someone at a casino for business discussions. But Jonathan was only 19 years old in 1996, too young to legally gamble in Arizona casinos. Harrison realized Webb's story had always been flawed. A 19-year-old couldn't legally gamble in Phoenix casinos. Any casino employee would have immediately checked Jonathan's identification and refused service. The detective called Richard Sterling with a crucial question. "Mr. Sterling, I need to ask about Jonathan's gambling habits. Was he known to gamble in casinos despite his age?" "Detective, Jonathan never gambled. I was extremely strict about that because of my position in the industry. Jonathan understood that underage gambling could destroy my casino licenses. He wouldn't have risked it under any circumstances." Harrison now had proof that Webb had lied in his original statement. Jonathan would never have left the party to gamble at a casino because he couldn't legally gamble and wouldn't have risked his father's business empire. Late that night, Harrison received an unexpected call from Richard Sterling. "Detective, I've been reviewing Marcus Webb's business dealings from 1996. Webb was attempting to purchase property adjacent to the Silver Mirage for a major development project. The deal required city council approval and was worth tens of millions of dollars. Did Jonathan know about this business deal?" "Jonathan worked in our accounting department that summer. He would have had access to financial records related to Webb's development project." If Jonathan discovered something inappropriate about the deal, Harrison realized they had found the motive. Jonathan may have discovered illegal activity related to Webb's development project and threatened to expose it. Webb had both opportunity and motive to eliminate Jonathan. The interview with Webb would be crucial. Harrison prepared to confront him with evidence of his lies and demand explanations for the hotel rooms and wallet discovery. After 11 years, Jonathan Sterling's disappearance was finally becoming a solvable case. Detective Harrison arrived at attorney Michael Richardson's downtown Phoenix office at 9:45 a.m. on March 20, 2007. The law firm occupied the top 3 floors of a prestigious building with sweeping views of the Valley of the Sun. Richardson specialized in white-collar criminal defense and had represented numerous casino executives throughout his career. Marcus Webb sat at a polished conference table looking significantly older than Harrison remembered from 1996. At 54, Webb's dark hair had turned completely gray, and deep stress lines marked his face. He wore an expensive navy suit but appeared nervous and uncomfortable. "Mr. Webb, thank you for agreeing to this interview," Harrison began. "I need to inform you that you're not under arrest, but you have the right to remain silent and have your attorney present during questioning." Attorney Richardson interrupted smoothly. "Detective, my client is here voluntarily to assist with your investigation. However, we reserve the right to terminate this interview at any time." Harrison placed a thick file folder on the conference table. "Mr. Webb, I'm investigating new evidence in the Jonathan Sterling disappearance case. Are you familiar with room 3142 at the Silver Mirage Casino Resort?" Webb glanced at his attorney before answering cautiously. "I may have stayed in that room occasionally. I don't recall specific room numbers from 11 years ago." Harrison opened the file and displayed hotel registration records. "According to Silver Mirage records, you registered for room 3142 from September 10th through September 15th, 1996. That was the same period when you hosted Jonathan's farewell party." "I sometimes booked rooms at the Silver Mirage for convenience," Webb replied. "Richard Sterling was my business partner. It wasn't unusual. Why would you need a hotel room when you live 25 minutes away in Paradise Valley?" Webb hesitated noticeably. "Detective, I was working on several complex projects that required late-night meetings and early morning appointments. It was more efficient to stay at the casino." Harrison displayed Flamingo Palace registration records. "You also had a room at the Flamingo Palace during the same period, room 847. Can you explain why you needed rooms at 2 different casinos simultaneously?" Attorney Richardson leaned forward. "Detective, where exactly are you going with these questions?" Harrison ignored the attorney and addressed Webb directly. 3 days ago, a hotel cleaning employee found Jonathan Sterling's wallet hidden behind furniture in room 3142. The wallet contains your business card and a room key for your Flamingo Palace suite. Webb's face went ashen. He whispered something urgently to his attorney, who shook his head firmly. Mr. Webb, in your original statement, you said Jonathan left your party to meet someone at a casino for business discussions. But Jonathan was 19 years old in 1996. He couldn't legally gamble in Arizona. I may have misunderstood what Jonathan told me, Webb stammered. It was 11 years ago. Harrison leaned forward intensely. Mr. Webb, the room key card for Flamingo Palace Room 847 was last used at 1:43 a.m. on September 13, 1996. That's over 2 hours after Jonathan supposedly left your party. How did Jonathan obtain your room key? Webb looked at his attorney desperately. Richardson stood up abruptly. Detective, I think we need to take a break. Mr. Webb, I'm trying to understand how Jonathan's wallet ended up hidden in your hotel room. Can you help me with that? Webb stood up shakily. I don't know how Jonathan's wallet got there. I had absolutely nothing to do with his disappearance. Harrison remained seated, his voice calm but persistent. In 1996, you were attempting to purchase property for a development project worth millions of dollars. Jonathan worked in his father's accounting department and had access to financial records. Did Jonathan discover something about your business dealings? Attorney Richardson moved toward the door. Detective Harrison, this interview is over. My client has cooperated voluntarily, but we're terminating the discussion immediately. Mr. Webb, lying to police in a homicide investigation is a felony offense. If you have information about Jonathan's disappearance and fail to provide it, you'll be charged with obstruction of justice. Webb and his attorney left the conference room without responding. Harrison gathered his files and made detailed notes about Webb's reactions. The suspect had shown clear signs of deception and panic when confronted with evidence. From the law office, Harrison drove directly to the Silver Mirage Casino to meet with Richard Sterling. Richard's executive office reflected his successful casino career. Expensive leather furniture, awards from gaming organizations, and photographs with Phoenix celebrities and politicians. Mr. Sterling, I just interviewed Marcus Webb. He couldn't explain how Jonathan's wallet got into his hotel room or why Jonathan had Webb's room key from the Flamingo Palace. Richard sat behind his massive desk looking grim. Detective, I've spent the last 2 days reviewing every business deal I had with Marcus Webb in 1996. I discovered something extremely disturbing. Richard handed Harrison a thick accordion file. This contains documentation for Webb's development project adjacent to the Silver Mirage. The project required Phoenix City Council approval for zoning changes. I found evidence that Webb made significant cash payments to 3 city council members. Harrison examined the financial records carefully. Are you saying Webb bribed city council members to approve his development project? The payments were disguised as consulting fees and legal retainers, but there's no documentation of any actual consulting work or legal services performed. Webb paid Councilman David Martinez $40,000, Councilwoman Sharon Foster $35,000, and Councilman Robert Hayes $45,000 in August 1996. Did Jonathan have access to these financial records? Jonathan worked on the accounting for this project during his summer internship. He would have reviewed these payments and recognized them as highly improper, possibly illegal. Harrison realized the motive was crystallizing. Jonathan discovered Webb's bribery scheme and threatened to expose it. Webb couldn't allow the corruption to be revealed because it would destroy both the development project and his reputation in the casino industry. Mr. Sterling, when did Jonathan finish his internship? Jonathan's last day was September 11, 1996. The farewell party was the next evening. The timeline fit perfectly. Jonathan discovered the bribery evidence on his final day of work, and Webb hosted the farewell party the following evening. Webb had the opportunity to confront Jonathan about his discovery. Harrison's phone rang. The crime lab technician said, "Detective, we've processed the wallet you submitted as evidence. We found Jonathan Sterling's fingerprints and one additional set of prints that don't match anyone in our database. Can you compare those prints to Marcus Webb if I bring him in for questioning? Absolutely. If Webb handled that wallet, we'll be able to prove it definitively. Harrison ended the call and looked at Richard Sterling. I need to obtain Webb's fingerprints. The wallet contains unidentified prints that might belong to him. Detective, what can I do to help catch the person who killed my son? Keep this information completely confidential. Don't contact Webb or anyone associated with him. If Webb realizes we've discovered the bribery scheme, he might destroy evidence or flee the jurisdiction. Harrison spent the afternoon researching the 1996 Phoenix City Council records. He found that the zoning approval for Webb's development project passed by a narrow vote of 4-3 on September 8, 1996. Councilman Martinez and Hayes, along with Councilwoman Foster, all voted in favor of the project. The detective contacted the FBI's white-collar crime unit in Phoenix. Bribery of public officials was a federal offense, and the FBI had superior resources for complex financial investigations. Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez agreed to meet with Harrison the next morning. Detective, if you can prove bribery connected to a murder case, we'll provide full federal support for the investigation. That evening, Harrison drove through Phoenix reviewing the case timeline methodically. Jonathan discovered bribery evidence on September 11th. Webb hosted the farewell party on September 12th. Jonathan left the party and went to the Flamingo Palace using Webb's room key. Jonathan's wallet was found hidden in Webb's room at the Silver Mirage. The evidence suggested Webb lured Jonathan to the Flamingo Palace under false pretenses, confronted him about the bribery discovery, and killed him to prevent exposure. Webb then moved Jonathan's body and disposed of it somewhere in the vast Arizona desert, but accidentally kept the wallet as evidence of his crime. Harrison called the district attorney's office to discuss arrest warrants. With the fingerprint evidence from the wallet, the hotel room registrations, and the bribery motive, they had probable cause to arrest Webb for murder. Detective Harrison, bring me Webb's fingerprints tomorrow, District Attorney Patricia Nash said. If they match the prints on the wallet, we'll file charges immediately. Harrison prepared for the next day's confrontation. Webb had been given an opportunity to explain the evidence voluntarily during the attorney meeting. Now it was time for arrests and formal interrogations under oath. The detective reviewed his interview notes from Webb's attorney meeting. Webb had shown clear consciousness of guilt when confronted with evidence. His inability to explain the wallet discovery or room key usage indicated deliberate deception rather than innocent forgetfulness. Late that night, Harrison received a call from Silver Mirage Security. Detective Marcus Webb is here at the casino. He's in the high roller section having what appears to be a heated argument with Richard Sterling. They're in one of the private poker rooms. Harrison grabbed his badge and weapon. Webb was violating the instruction to avoid contact with Richard Sterling. This suggested desperation or an attempt to manipulate the investigation. Don't let Webb leave the casino under any circumstances. I'm on my way. The detective drove through Phoenix traffic toward the Silver Mirage, knowing that the confrontation with Webb was about to escalate into an active arrest situation. Detective Harrison arrived at the Silver Mirage Casino within 20 minutes. His unmarked police car pulling up to the employee entrance where Security Director James Walsh waited anxiously. Detective, Webb and Sterling are still in the Diamond Room. That's our most exclusive private poker area, Walsh explained as he escorted Harrison through back corridors to avoid public attention. We can hear raised voices through the soundproof door. Webb seems extremely agitated, and Sterling is demanding answers about something. Harrison positioned himself outside the Diamond Room door, listening carefully to the muffled conversation inside. Through the heavy oak door, he could distinguish Richard Sterling's voice, controlled but angry. Marcus, the police found Jonathan's wallet in your hotel room. How do you explain that? Webb's response was barely audible, his voice strained and desperate. Richard, you have to believe me. I didn't hurt Jonathan. Someone else must have planted that wallet there to frame me. Marcus, you had hotel rooms at 2 different casinos that night. Jonathan had your room key. Stop lying to me after 11 years. Harrison decided to intervene before the confrontation escalated further. He knocked firmly on the door and entered the room without waiting for permission. Richard and Webb stood on opposite sides of an elaborate poker table covered in green felt. Webb looked disheveled and desperate, his expensive suit wrinkled and his face flushed with stress. Richard appeared angry but controlled, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Mr. Webb, I specifically instructed you not to contact Mr. Sterling during this investigation," Harrison said firmly. "You're interfering with an active police investigation." Webb turned toward Harrison, his eyes wild with panic. "Detective, I came here to explain everything to Richard personally. I know how this looks, but I'm completely innocent. Mr. Webb, you need to come with me for formal questioning. You're not under arrest at this moment, but I need complete answers about the evidence we've discovered." Webb looked at Richard pleadingly. "Richard, we've been business partners for 12 years. You know I would never hurt Jonathan. He was like a nephew to me." Richard's voice was ice cold. "Marcus, my son's wallet was hidden in your hotel room for 11 years. That's not a coincidence, and it's not a frame-up." Harrison escorted Webb from the poker room to a security office within the casino complex. Richard followed, insisting on observing the questioning. "Mr. Sterling, I need to interview Mr. Webb privately," Harrison explained. "You can wait in the adjacent room, but you cannot be present during the interrogation." In the security office, Harrison sat across from Webb at a small table, a recording device between them. Webb's hands trembled as he adjusted his tie repeatedly. "Mr. Webb, I need you to provide fingerprints for comparison to evidence we've found," Harrison began. "You have the right to refuse, but that refusal can be used against you in court proceedings." "I don't understand why you need my fingerprints," Webb protested. "I told you I don't know how Jonathan's wallet ended up in that hotel room." Harrison called the crime lab technician, who arrived within 40 minutes with portable fingerprinting equipment. Webb reluctantly provided his prints, which were immediately scanned and compared to the unidentified prints from Jonathan's wallet. While waiting for results, Harrison continued his questioning. "Mr. Webb, tell me about your development project in 1996, the one requiring Phoenix City Council approval." Webb's expression changed dramatically, his face going pale. "What does my business have to do with Jonathan's disappearance?" Jonathan worked on the accounting for that project. He had access to financial records showing payments to city council members. Webb stood up abruptly and walked to the window overlooking the casino floor. "Detective, those were legitimate consulting payments for urban planning expertise. Mr. Webb, I've reviewed the records. There's no documentation of any consulting work performed by Councilman Martinez, Councilwoman Foster, or Councilman Hayes." Webb returned to his chair and buried his head in his hands. "Detective, even if those payments were questionable, that doesn't mean I killed Jonathan." Harrison's phone rang. The crime lab technician announced, "Detective, the fingerprints are a definitive match. Marcus Webb's prints are clearly present on Jonathan Sterling's wallet." Harrison ended the call and looked directly at Webb. "Mr. Webb, your fingerprints are on Jonathan's wallet. You've been lying about your involvement in his disappearance." Webb's face went completely white. "I can explain that. Jonathan showed me his wallet that evening at the party. He was excited about getting his first credit card for college expenses." "When did Jonathan show you his wallet?" "During the party, sometime in the evening." Harrison made notes. "Mr. Webb, if Jonathan showed you his wallet at the party, why was it found hidden in your hotel room at the Silver Mirage?" Webb couldn't answer. He sat silently, staring at the table, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. Harrison called for backup officers and formally arrested Webb. "Marcus Webb, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and suspicion of murder in the death of Jonathan Sterling. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." As Webb was handcuffed, he suddenly looked up at Harrison. "Detective, I want to make a deal. I have information about other people involved in Jonathan's disappearance." Harrison was surprised by this development. Are you saying other people were involved in killing Jonathan Sterling? I'm saying Jonathan's disappearance is connected to corruption involving more people than just me. City council members, casino executives, even police officers. Mr. Webb, if you have information about police corruption, you need to provide it immediately. Webb looked around the room nervously. Not here. Too many people might be listening. I need to speak with federal agents, not local police. Harrison realized the case was expanding beyond a simple murder investigation. If Webb was telling the truth about police corruption, then local law enforcement couldn't be trusted with sensitive information. The detective immediately called FBI Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez, I have a suspect in custody who claims knowledge of police corruption related to the Sterling murder case. Can you come to the Silver Mirage Casino immediately? Detective Harrison, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Don't allow anyone else to question the suspect until I arrive. Harrison instructed the backup officers to guard Webb without allowing him to speak to anyone. Richard Sterling was informed that Webb had been arrested, but couldn't be given details about his claims of broader corruption. Special Agent Rodriguez arrived with 2 additional FBI agents and immediately took control of the interrogation. Harrison briefed her on the evidence. The wallet discovery, hotel room registrations, bribery payments, and Webb's fingerprints on the wallet. Agent Rodriguez, Webb claims other people were involved in Jonathan's disappearance, including local police officers. If that's accurate, we need federal involvement to ensure the investigation isn't compromised. Webb was transported to the FBI field office in Phoenix for questioning under federal protection. Before leaving the casino, he told Harrison, "Detective, be very careful who you trust in your department. Not everyone wants this case solved." Harrison spent the remainder of the evening securing all evidence and case files. If Webb's claims about police corruption were accurate, then someone in law enforcement had been protecting the people involved in Jonathan's murder for 11 years. The detective called Richard Sterling to provide an update. "Mr. Sterling, Webb has been arrested, but he's claiming other people were involved in Jonathan's disappearance. The FBI is now handling the interrogation. Detective, I just want justice for my son. If there's a conspiracy involving multiple people, I want every single one of them prosecuted to the full extent of the law." Harrison agreed to keep Richard informed as the investigation progressed, but warned him that federal involvement would likely slow down the process while ensuring thoroughness and integrity. Late that night, Harrison received a call from Agent Rodriguez. "Detective, Webb is providing detailed information about a corruption network involving city council members, casino executives, and at least 3 police officers. This is significantly bigger than we initially realized." Agent Rodriguez, who are the police officers Webb is identifying? "I can't provide names over the phone, but I need you to come to our field office tomorrow morning. We're going to need your complete case file and your assistance in identifying which officers had access to information about the original Sterling investigation." Harrison realized that Jonathan Sterling's murder had been covered up by a network of corrupt officials who benefited from keeping the truth hidden. The wallet discovery had exposed not just a killer, but an entire conspiracy that had operated with impunity for over a decade. The detective prepared for a complex federal investigation that would examine 11 years of corruption in Phoenix city government and law enforcement. Jonathan's disappearance was just the beginning of what promised to be the largest corruption scandal in Arizona history. Justice for Jonathan would require convicting not just his killer, but everyone who had helped cover up the crime for 11 years. The young man's integrity had ultimately triumphed over the corruption that killed him, but the full scope of the conspiracy was only beginning to be understood. Detective Harrison arrived at the FBI field office in downtown Phoenix at 8 a.m. on March 22, 2007. Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez met him in a secure conference room equipped with sophisticated recording devices and evidence display boards covering 3 walls. 2 additional agents were present: Agent Michael Santos, specializing in public corruption cases, and Agent Jennifer Park, an expert in organized crime investigations. Detective Harrison, Marcus Webb provided information throughout the night about a corruption network that has been operating in Phoenix since the early 1990s. Agent Rodriguez began. The network includes city council members, casino executives, development contractors, and law enforcement officers. Agent Rodriguez displayed a complex organizational chart showing connections between various individuals. Webb claims this network manipulated city development projects, casino licensing procedures, and police investigations for massive financial gain. Jonathan Sterling discovered evidence of this corruption and was killed to prevent exposure. Harrison studied the chart carefully. Names included Councilman David Martinez, Councilwoman Sharon Foster, Councilman Robert Hayes, casino executive Thomas Richardson, development contractor Samuel Wade, and 3 police officers: Detective Lieutenant Paul Sullivan, Sergeant Maria Holmes, and Detective Captain Frank Morrison. Harrison's blood ran cold seeing Morrison's name. Frank Morrison was his own captain and had supervised portions of the original Sterling investigation. Agent Rodriguez, both Sullivan and Morrison had direct access to the original Sterling investigation files. If they were protecting Webb, they could have deliberately misdirected the investigation away from him. Agent Santos opened a thick file folder. Webb provided detailed bank records showing cash payments to all these individuals over an 8-year period from 1994 to 2002. The payments totaled over $3.2 million and were disguised as consulting fees, legal retainers, and security services. Harrison examined the bank records with growing amazement. How did Webb fund payments of this magnitude? His development company wouldn't have generated enough legitimate cash for bribes on this scale. Agent Park answered grimly. Webb claims the money came from Richard Sterling's casino operations, specifically from skimming unreported gambling revenue and inflating construction contracts for casino improvements and renovations. This revelation stunned Harrison completely. Are you saying Richard Sterling was involved in the corruption network that killed his own son? Webb insists Richard was completely unaware of the network's existence. Agent Rodriguez explained. Webb was skimming money from Silver Mirage operations without Richard's knowledge and using those funds to finance the bribery scheme. Agent Santos continued. Jonathan discovered the financial irregularities during his summer internship. He found evidence of inflated contracts, unreported revenue, and suspicious cash withdrawals from casino accounts. Webb realized Jonathan would report these discoveries to his father. Agent Park added. Webb couldn't allow Jonathan to expose the skimming operation because it would reveal the entire corruption network to federal authorities. Harrison understood the complete motive now. Webb couldn't allow Jonathan to expose the financial crimes because it would destroy not just Webb, but dozens of corrupt officials who had been receiving payments for years. Agent Rodriguez displayed additional evidence. Webb provided extremely detailed information about how Jonathan was killed and where his body was disposed of. According to his confession, Jonathan was confronted at the Flamingo Palace hotel room and killed during a physical struggle when he refused to remain silent. Where is Jonathan's body? Harrison asked. Agent Park opened a detailed map of the Phoenix metropolitan area. Webb claims the body was buried in the Sonoran Desert approximately 40 miles northeast of Phoenix, near the Salt River Recreation Area. He provided specific GPS coordinates and detailed landmarks. Harrison felt a mixture of relief and profound sadness. After 11 years, Jonathan's family would finally have closure and be able to properly bury their son. Agent Santos explained the next phase of the investigation. We're obtaining federal search warrants for all properties and bank accounts associated with the corruption network members. We're also placing comprehensive surveillance on suspects to prevent evidence destruction or attempts to flee. What about the 3 police officers? Harrison asked. How do we handle potential interference from within the department? Agent Rodriguez had anticipated this critical problem. We've coordinated directly with Police Chief William Carter and Internal Affairs Commander Lisa Park. Sullivan, Holmes, and Morrison have been suspended pending federal investigation. All Sterling case evidence has been secured under federal protection. Harrison realized his own safety might be at serious risk. Agent Rodriguez, if Webb is telling the truth about police corruption, then some officers might try to prevent me from testifying about what I've discovered. Detective, We're providing federal protection for you and your family until all arrests are completed. We expect to execute simultaneous arrest warrants within 72 hours. The FBI agents explained their comprehensive strategy. Simultaneous arrests would prevent conspirators from warning each other or destroying critical evidence. Bank accounts would be immediately frozen, properties searched thoroughly, and electronic communications monitored continuously. Agent Park reviewed Webb's detailed confession. Webb claims Jonathan was lured to the Flamingo Palace hotel room under the pretense of discussing a lucrative job opportunity after college graduation. Jonathan arrived alone and was immediately confronted about his discovery of the financial irregularities. What exactly happened in that hotel room? Harrison asked. Webb says he tried desperately to convince Jonathan to remain quiet about the accounting discrepancies he had discovered. When Jonathan refused and threatened to contact federal authorities immediately, Webb physically restrained him. Jonathan struck his head on hotel furniture during the struggle and died from the traumatic injury. Harrison made detailed notes about the confession. How did Webb dispose of Jonathan's body? Agent Santos consulted Webb's statement. Webb called Samuel Wade, the development contractor, who had heavy equipment and vehicles for transporting construction materials. Wade brought a pickup truck to the Flamingo Palace around 3:30 a.m. and helped move Jonathan's body to the desert burial site. Why did Webb keep Jonathan's wallet? Agent Rodriguez answered. Webb claims he accidentally grabbed the wallet while moving the body and completely forgot about it until the next day. He discovered it in his jacket pocket and hid it in his Silver Mirage hotel room, intending to dispose of it later but never following through. The FBI agents outlined the extensive evidence they needed to corroborate Webb's confession completely. Ground-penetrating radar would search the burial site for human remains. Financial experts would analyze bank records and casino accounting systems for evidence of the skimming operation. Digital forensic specialists would examine computer files and electronic communications for additional evidence. Harrison asked about Richard Sterling's potential involvement. Do we have any evidence that Richard knew about the skimming operation? Agent Park reviewed comprehensive financial documents. Webb insists Richard was completely unaware of the theft. The skimming was conducted through contractors and vendors who systematically inflated invoices and kicked back excess payments to Webb's accounts. How much money was stolen from the Silver Mirage over the years? Agent Santos calculated from detailed bank records. Approximately $2.8 million between 1994 and 2002. The scheme ended when Webb moved to other development projects that didn't require direct casino involvement. Harrison realized Richard Sterling had been a victim of the conspiracy rather than a participant. His son was murdered to cover up systematic theft from his own business empire. Agent Rodriguez prepared Harrison for his crucial role in the prosecution phase. Detective, you'll be the primary witness regarding the wallet discovery and Webb's initial lies and deceptions. Your testimony will establish the investigative timeline that led to Webb's arrest and confession. When will the arrests begin? Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., we'll simultaneously arrest Webb, Martinez, Foster, Hayes, Richardson, Wade, Sullivan, Holmes, and Morrison. You'll participate in the arrests of the 3 police officers. Harrison spent the remainder of the day preparing comprehensive reports and securing evidence for the federal prosecution. The case had expanded from a missing person investigation to a major corruption scandal involving millions of dollars and multiple felonies across several years. That evening, Harrison called Richard Sterling to provide a crucial update. Mr. Sterling, the FBI has confirmed Webb's detailed confession. They believe they know exactly where Jonathan's body is buried. Recovery operations will begin tomorrow morning. Richard was quiet for several seconds, his voice thick with emotion when he finally spoke. Detective, will I be able to see my son and bring him home? Yes, sir. The FBI will coordinate with you once the remains are recovered and positively identified. Jonathan will finally be able to come home to his family. Harrison prepared for the most significant day of arrests in his entire career. After 11 years of uncertainty and grief, justice for Jonathan Sterling was finally within reach. The scope of the corruption network was staggering, But Jonathan's integrity and his father's determination had ultimately exposed the truth. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of the end for one of Arizona's largest criminal conspiracies. At 5:30 a.m. on March 23, 2007, Detective Harrison met with FBI agents at a temporary command center established in a Phoenix hotel conference room. Large-scale maps displayed arrest locations throughout the metropolitan area, and sophisticated communication equipment connected teams positioned at 9 different locations across the valley. Special Agent Rodriguez reviewed the coordination plan with military precision. Teams are in position at all 9 locations. All suspects are under surveillance and appear to be at their residences or expected locations. We execute all arrests simultaneously at exactly 6 a.m. to prevent any warnings or evidence destruction. Harrison was assigned to the team arresting Detective Captain Frank Morrison, his own superior officer. Agent Santos explained Morrison's role in the corruption network with grim detail. Morrison was the supervisor who controlled evidence processing and witness interviews in the original Sterling investigation. Webb paid him $85,000 over 4 years to misdirect the investigation away from casino connections and potential corruption angles. At exactly 6 a.m., Harrison and 4 FBI agents approached Morrison's upscale home in Paradise Valley. Morrison answered the door in his bathrobe, clearly surprised by the early morning visit but attempting to maintain his composure. "Frank Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice in connection with the Jonathan Sterling murder investigation," Agent Santos announced as handcuffs were applied. Morrison showed no resistance as he was taken into custody, but his wife began crying hysterically as agents searched the house for evidence. Harrison found files in Morrison's home office containing copies of original Sterling case documents that should have remained securely at police headquarters. The files revealed evidence of deliberate investigative misdirection, including witness statements that were never properly followed up and forensic evidence that was never submitted for processing. Morrison had systematically sabotaged the investigation to protect Webb and the corruption network. By 7:30 a.m., all 9 arrests had been completed successfully. No suspects had attempted to flee or offered any resistance. Evidence searches recovered extensive bank records, correspondence, and electronic files supporting Webb's confession about the corruption network's operations. Agent Rodriguez coordinated with the search team at the desert burial site. Ground-penetrating radar had identified a significant anomaly in the soil at the exact coordinates Webb had provided. Excavation equipment was being transported to the remote location in the Sonoran Desert. Harrison drove to the burial site with Richard Sterling, who had insisted on being present when his son's remains were recovered. The location was approximately 40 miles northeast of Phoenix in harsh desert terrain near abandoned copper mining claims. FBI forensic experts had established a comprehensive crime scene perimeter around the suspected burial site. Richard stood at the perimeter fence, watching silently as excavation equipment carefully removed layers of desert soil that had concealed his son for 11 years. At 11:20 a.m., forensic investigators located human remains approximately 5 feet below the surface. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the FBI's chief forensic anthropologist, examined the remains carefully before making any public announcements. "We have human remains consistent with a young adult male," Dr. Warren announced professionally. "The remains appear to have been buried for an extended period consistent with the 1996 timeframe. I'll need to conduct detailed analysis to confirm positive identification." Richard Sterling asked quietly, "How long before we know for certain that it's Jonathan?" Dr. Warren answered with compassion, "Dental records comparison should provide positive identification within 24 hours. If dental records are unavailable or inconclusive, DNA analysis will take approximately 1 week." Harrison contacted Jonathan's dentist to obtain dental records for the identification process. Dr. Robert Chun at Scottsdale Family Dentistry had maintained Jonathan's comprehensive records since 1994 and agreed to provide them immediately. While forensic experts processed the burial site, Harrison returned to FBI headquarters to participate in suspect interrogations. Webb's confession was being corroborated through detailed interviews with other network members. Agent Park briefed Harrison on the morning's interrogations. Councilman Martinez confessed to accepting bribes from Webb in exchange for favorable zoning votes. He provided details about 7 development projects where votes were essentially purchased between 1994 and 1999. What about the other suspects? Councilwoman Foster is denying all involvement despite bank records showing cash deposits that exactly match Webb's payment schedule. Samuel Wade, the contractor, admitted helping dispose of Jonathan's body, but claims he didn't know Jonathan was dead when Webb asked for assistance. Harrison asked about Sergeant Maria Holmes, one of the corrupt police officers. Holmes was responsible for witness interviews in the original investigation. She admits to accepting money from Webb, but denies knowing it was connected to the Sterling case or any murder. Agent Santos explained the federal charging strategy. Webb will be charged with murder, conspiracy, and racketeering. The others will face conspiracy and bribery charges. If we can prove they knew about Jonathan's murder, we'll add accessory charges. At 2:30 p.m., Dr. Warren called with identification results. Detective Harrison, dental records definitively confirm the remains are Jonathan Sterling. Cause of death appears to be severe blunt force trauma to the skull, completely consistent with Webb's confession about an accidental death during a physical struggle. Harrison immediately called Richard Sterling with the confirmation. Richard received the news quietly, then said with quiet dignity, "Detective, I want to see my son as soon as possible. Jonathan has been lost in the desert for 11 years. I need to bring him home where he belongs. Mr. Sterling, the remains will be released to you after all forensic processing is complete. That should be within 2 to 3 days." Harrison spent the afternoon coordinating with the District Attorney's Office on charging decisions. District Attorney Patricia Nash reviewed the comprehensive evidence and approved murder charges against Webb and conspiracy charges against all network members. Detective Harrison, this is the largest corruption case in Arizona history, Nash announced. We'll be requesting federal prosecutors to handle the trial due to the scope and complexity of the charges involved. Agent Rodriguez confirmed that federal prosecution was appropriate. The corruption network operated across state lines and involved federal crimes including racketeering and money laundering. The Justice Department will assign a special prosecutor to handle all aspects of the case. By evening, local news media had learned about the arrests and begun extensive reporting on the corruption scandal. The Arizona Republic headline read, "FBI arrests 9 in Sterling murder cover-up." Television stations provided continuous coverage of the corruption network allegations and the recovery of Jonathan's remains. Harrison held a press conference with FBI agents and District Attorney Nash. After 11 years, we have arrests in the Jonathan Sterling murder case. New evidence led us to discover a corruption network that killed Jonathan to prevent exposure of their extensive criminal activities. Richard Sterling issued a statement through his attorney. "My family is grateful that justice is finally being served for Jonathan. We thank Detective Harrison and the FBI for their dedication to finding the truth and bringing these criminals to justice." That night, Harrison reviewed the case developments with amazement. The wallet discovery by Maria Gonzalez had exposed not just Jonathan's killer, but an entire network of corrupt officials who had operated with complete impunity for years. Webb's confession provided detailed insight into how the corruption network functioned systematically. City council members voted favorably on development projects in exchange for substantial cash payments. Police officers protected the network by deliberately misdirecting investigations that might expose their criminal activities. Casino executives and contractors facilitated sophisticated money laundering through inflated contracts and unreported revenue. Harrison realized that without Maria's discovery of the wallet, the corruption network might have continued operating indefinitely. Jonathan's death would have remained an unsolved missing person case, and corrupt officials would have continued profiting from their criminal activities for years to come. The detective prepared for months of complex legal proceedings as federal prosecutors built comprehensive cases against all network members. Jonathan Sterling's murder had finally been solved, but the full extent of the corruption scandal was just beginning to be understood by law enforcement and the public. Justice for Jonathan would require convicting not just his killer, but everyone who had helped cover up the crime for 11 years. The young man's commitment to integrity had ultimately triumphed over the corruption that destroyed his life, but the legal battle was just beginning. 3 days after the arrests, federal prosecutors convened a grand jury to hear comprehensive evidence against the corruption network. Detective Harrison was the first witness, testifying about Maria Gonzalez's wallet discovery and the subsequent investigation that led to Marcus Webb's arrest and confession. U.S. Attorney Patricia Williams questioned Harrison about the physical evidence that broke the case open after 11 years. "Detective, please explain to the grand jury how Jonathan Sterling's wallet came to be found in Marcus Webb's hotel room 11 years after the murder." Based on Webb's detailed confession, he accidentally kept the wallet after disposing of Jonathan's body in the desert. He hid it behind furniture in his Silver Mirage hotel room and forgot about it completely. The wallet remained there until a cleaning employee moved the furniture during deep cleaning procedures. The grand jury heard extensive testimony from FBI agents about Webb's detailed confession and his cooperation in exposing the broader corruption network that had operated in Phoenix for nearly a decade. Agent Rodriguez testified about the comprehensive financial evidence. "Our analysis shows approximately $3.2 million in improper payments to public officials over an 8-year period. The money was systematically stolen from Richard Sterling's casino through inflated contracts and unreported gambling revenue." Richard Sterling testified about his son's discovery of the financial irregularities and Jonathan's commitment to reporting them to appropriate authorities. Jonathan was an exceptionally conscientious student who took his accounting internship very seriously. When he found discrepancies in the financial records, he planned to report them to federal authorities immediately. His integrity and commitment to doing the right thing cost him his life. The grand jury issued comprehensive indictments against all 9 network members on March 28, 2007. Webb faced charges of murder, conspiracy, racketeering, and money laundering. The others were charged with conspiracy, bribery, and racketeering. Detective Captain Frank Morrison's indictment included specific charges related to obstruction of justice in the original Sterling investigation. Evidence showed Morrison had deliberately failed to process crucial forensic evidence and had actively discouraged witnesses from providing information that might have led investigators to Webb. Harrison attended Morrison's arraignment hearing with mixed emotions. Morrison had been his supervisor and mentor for several years, but the evidence of his corruption was overwhelming and undeniable. Morrison's defense attorney argued for bail, claiming his client posed no flight risk and had cooperated with authorities. Federal prosecutors opposed bail, citing the seriousness of the charges and Morrison's access to law enforcement resources that could be used to intimidate witnesses. Judge Margaret Foster denied bail for Morrison and all other defendants except Councilwoman Sharon Foster, who was released on $750,000 bond with electronic monitoring and strict travel restrictions. Judge Foster noted that Webb's cooperation and detailed confession warranted consideration of a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony against co-conspirators, but emphasized that he would still face substantial prison time for Jonathan's murder. Samuel Wade, the contractor who helped dispose of Jonathan's body, attempted to negotiate a comprehensive plea agreement. Wade's attorney met with federal prosecutors to discuss cooperation in exchange for significantly reduced charges. Agent Santos briefed Harrison on Wade's potential testimony. Wade claims Webb called him at 3:15 a.m. on September 13, 1996, asking for emergency help moving something heavy from the Flamingo Palace to a remote desert location. Wade says he didn't realize it was a human body until they were driving to the burial site. Do prosecutors believe Wade's story? Wade passed multiple polygraph tests, and his cell phone records confirm Webb called him at 3:18 a.m. that night. Wade's pickup truck was captured on Flamingo Palace security cameras arriving at 3:45 a.m. and departing at 4:22 a.m. Harrison realized Wade's testimony would corroborate crucial details of Webb's confession and provide independent evidence of the murder timeline that prosecutors needed for conviction. U.S. Attorney Williams announced that Webb would testify against his co-conspirators in exchange for a life sentence without possibility of parole instead of the death penalty. Webb's detailed knowledge of the corruption network made his testimony essential for prosecuting the other defendants successfully. The FBI continued investigating the full extent of the network's criminal activities over nearly a decade. Financial analysis revealed that the corruption had affected dozens of development projects in Phoenix between 1994 and 2002, resulting in millions of dollars in improper benefits to conspirators and inflated costs to taxpayers. Agent Rodriguez discovered additional evidence of the network's extensive reach. We found payments to building inspectors, planning commissioners, and even judges who handled cases involving network members. This corruption affected virtually the entire Phoenix development approval process for years. Harrison asked about other potential victims of the network's violence. Did the network kill anyone else to protect their criminal activities? We're actively investigating 4 suspicious deaths of people who might have discovered network activities. 3 were city employees who died in apparent accidents, and 1 was a journalist who was investigating casino corruption when he died in a car crash. The revelations about potential additional murders shocked Harrison completely. Jonathan's case had exposed what appeared to be a criminal organization willing to commit multiple murders to protect their extensive financial interests. Richard Sterling held a memorial service for Jonathan on March 30, 2007, 11 years after his son's disappearance. The service was attended by hundreds of people, including casino employees, family friends, and law enforcement officers who had worked tirelessly on the case. Harrison delivered a moving eulogy reflecting on Jonathan's character and legacy. Jonathan Sterling was a young man of absolute integrity who discovered corruption and planned to report it to proper authorities. His commitment to doing the right thing cost him his life, but his courage ultimately exposed a criminal network that had operated with impunity for years. Richard established the Jonathan Sterling Foundation for Ethical Business Practices, dedicating substantial resources to preventing corruption in Phoenix business and government operations. The foundation would work closely with law enforcement agencies to investigate suspicious activities and protect whistleblowers from retaliation. Webb's trial was scheduled for September 2007, with his testimony against co-conspirators beginning with pre-trial depositions in June. Defense attorneys for the other defendants prepared to challenge Webb's credibility and argue that his testimony was motivated solely by his plea agreement rather than genuine remorse. Harrison continued working closely with federal prosecutors to prepare evidence for the complex trials ahead. The wallet discovery that began the investigation had led to the largest corruption prosecution in Arizona history, exposing systematic criminal activity that had affected Phoenix government and business operations for nearly a decade. Agent Park provided Harrison with an update on the ongoing investigation scope. We've identified 52 development projects affected by the corruption network over 8 years. The total financial impact exceeds $15 million in improper benefits and artificially inflated costs to taxpayers and businesses. How many additional suspects are you investigating? 23 people are under active investigation for potential involvement in network activities. We expect additional indictments within 90 days as we continue analyzing financial records and electronic communications. Harrison realized the full scope of the corruption was still being discovered and documented. Jonathan's murder had been the key that unlocked a massive criminal conspiracy affecting Phoenix government and business operations for nearly a decade. The detective reflected on the case's remarkable development from Maria Gonzalez's routine cleaning discovery to the major federal prosecution that would reshape Phoenix politics and business practices. A single wallet hidden behind hotel furniture had exposed killers, thieves, and corrupt officials who thought they had escaped justice forever. As Harrison prepared for months of trials and testimony ahead, he knew that Jonathan Sterling's integrity had ultimately triumphed over the corruption that killed him. Justice would be served not just for Jonathan, but for all the victims of the criminal network his death had finally exposed to federal authorities. The young man's commitment to ethical behavior had protected future victims from corruption and violence, ensuring that his legacy would extend far beyond his tragic death in a Phoenix hotel room 11 years earlier. Marcus Webb's murder trial began on September 12, 2007, in U.S. District Court in Phoenix. Federal prosecutors presented their case to a jury of 12 Phoenix residents who had been extensively questioned about their knowledge of the corruption scandal that had dominated local news coverage for months. U.S. Attorney Patricia Williams delivered a powerful opening statement to the packed courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about greed, corruption, and cold-blooded murder. Marcus Webb killed Jonathan Sterling to protect a criminal network that stole millions of dollars from Phoenix taxpayers and casino customers over nearly a decade. Webb's defense attorney, Richard Patterson, argued that Webb was guilty of financial crimes but not premeditated murder. My client made serious mistakes in his business dealings and financial practices, but Jonathan Sterling's death was a tragic accident during a heated argument between friends. Mr. Webb never intended to kill anyone. Detective Harrison was the prosecution's first witness, testifying about the wallet discovery and the comprehensive investigation that followed. He explained methodically how the physical evidence connected Webb to Jonathan's disappearance and ultimately led to the discovery of the extensive corruption network. Defense attorney Patterson cross-examined Harrison aggressively, attempting to undermine the investigation's credibility. "Detective, isn't it true that you had absolutely no evidence against my client until he voluntarily provided information about other people involved? Doesn't that suggest cooperation and remorse rather than guilt?" Harrison answered carefully and professionally. "Mr. Webb provided information only after he was arrested and realized we had conclusive physical evidence of his involvement. His cooperation came after he was caught with evidence, not before." The prosecution's most dramatic evidence was Webb's own detailed confession, played for the jury from FBI interrogation recordings that lasted over 6 hours. In the recording, Webb described in chilling detail how Jonathan discovered the financial irregularities and threatened to expose the entire corruption network to federal authorities. Webb's voice on the recording was clear and unmistakable. "Jonathan found the inflated invoices and questioned me directly about them during his last day of work. He said he was going to report it to the FBI immediately. I couldn't let him destroy everything I had built over years of careful planning." The recording continued with Webb's description of the fatal confrontation at the Flamingo Palace hotel room. "I asked Jonathan to meet me at the Flamingo Palace to discuss a lucrative job opportunity after college graduation. When he arrived at the room, I tried desperately to convince him to stay quiet about what he had discovered in the financial records. Jonathan refused completely and said he had already copied all the evidence." Prosecutor Williams paused the recording and asked the jury to pay careful attention to Webb's next words, which revealed his criminal intent. "I grabbed Jonathan to physically stop him from leaving the room. He pulled away forcefully and fell backward, striking his head on the sharp corner of the marble desk. There was blood everywhere. I checked for a pulse, but he was already dead." The recording revealed Webb's immediate panic after Jonathan's death and his decision to cover up the crime rather than seek medical help or contact authorities. "I called Samuel Wade and told him I needed emergency help with the situation. Wade brought his pickup truck to the Flamingo Palace around 3:30 a.m. We wrapped Jonathan's body in hotel bed sheets and drove to a remote location in the desert that I had scouted during previous business trips. Richard Sterling attended every day of the trial, sitting in the front row behind the prosecution table. His presence served as a constant reminder to the jury that a father had lost his son and waited 11 years for justice and closure. Samuel Wade testified under his plea agreement, corroborating Webb's confession about disposing of Jonathan's body in the Sonoran Desert. Wade described arriving at the Flamingo Palace and finding Webb in a complete state of panic. "Marcus was covered in blood and shaking uncontrollably," Wade testified. "He kept saying it was a terrible accident and begging me to help him. I didn't realize what had actually happened until we were driving to the burial site." Wade's testimony continued with disturbing details. "We drove to the desert near the Salt River Recreation Area. Marcus had already chosen the specific location during previous scouting trips for his business. We buried Jonathan approximately 5 feet deep and marked the location with distinctive rocks arranged in a pattern." The prosecution presented comprehensive financial evidence showing the scope of the corruption network's criminal activities over 8 years. FBI forensic accountant Margaret Chen testified about the sophisticated money trail connecting Webb to city council members and police officers. Over 8 years, Mr. Webb made cash payments totaling $3.2 million to public officials in exchange for favorable votes and protection from investigation. The money was systematically stolen from Richard Sterling's casino operations through various elaborate schemes involving inflated contracts and unreported revenue. Detective Harrison testified about the evidence found in Captain Frank Morrison's home, including copies of original case files that proved Morrison had deliberately misdirected the investigation away from Webb and potential casino connections. Captain Morrison maintained copies of investigation files that should have remained securely at police headquarters. Harrison explained to the jury. These files showed evidence of systematic misdirection, including witness statements that were never properly investigated and forensic evidence that was never submitted for processing. Councilman David Martinez took the stand as a prosecution witness under his plea agreement. Martinez admitted accepting $40,000 from Webb in exchange for favorable votes on development projects over a 4-year period. Marcus Webb approached me in 1995 and offered substantial cash payments for supporting his development proposals. Martinez testified. I knew it was completely wrong, but the money was significant, and I convinced myself that the projects were actually beneficial to the city's economic development. Martinez's testimony revealed how the corruption network systematically recruited public officials. Webb identified council members who had financial problems or expensive lifestyles that exceeded their official salaries. He offered solutions to our money problems in exchange for reliable votes on specific issues that benefited his business interests. The prosecution's final witness was Richard Sterling, who testified about Jonathan's character and the devastating impact of his son's death on the family. Richard's emotional testimony moved several jurors to tears and provided crucial context about the victim's integrity. Jonathan was a young man of absolute integrity and moral courage, Richard testified. He discovered financial irregularities during his internship and planned to report them because he believed it was the right thing to do, regardless of personal consequences. His commitment to honesty and ethical behavior cost him his life. Defense attorney Patterson presented Webb's case by arguing that the death was accidental and that Webb's extensive cooperation with federal authorities demonstrated genuine remorse and acceptance of responsibility. Webb testified on his own behalf, claiming he never intended to harm Jonathan and that the death resulted from a tragic accident during an argument between friends. I only wanted to convince Jonathan to keep quiet about the financial discrepancies he had discovered, Webb testified. When he refused and threatened to contact federal authorities immediately, I panicked and grabbed him to prevent him from leaving the room. Jonathan fell and struck his head on the furniture. It was a completely tragic accident. Under cross-examination, Prosecutor Williams challenged Webb's account relentlessly. Mr. Webb, you had Jonathan's wallet in your possession for 11 years after his death. If his death was truly accidental, why didn't you call for medical help or contact police immediately? Webb struggled to provide a convincing answer. I panicked completely. I knew the financial evidence would expose everyone involved in the network. I thought I could cover it up temporarily and protect the other people who were involved. Mr. Webb, you chose to protect corrupt officials rather than seek help for a dying 19-year-old college student. That doesn't sound like an accident. It sounds like a deliberate decision to cover up a crime and protect your criminal enterprise. The comprehensive trial lasted 4 weeks. Closing arguments focused on whether Jonathan's death constituted premeditated murder or accidental manslaughter during a confrontation. The prosecution argued that Webb's elaborate cover-up proved criminal intent and consciousness of guilt, while the defense maintained that panic after an accidental death explained Webb's actions and decisions. On October 5, 2007, the jury deliberated for 3 days before returning their verdict. Foreman James Walsh announced solemnly, "We find the defendant Marcus Webb guilty of murder in the 2nd degree, conspiracy to commit racketeering, and money laundering." Webb showed no visible emotion as the verdict was read. Judge Margaret Foster scheduled sentencing for November 20, 2007, noting that federal sentencing guidelines recommended life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Richard Sterling issued a statement after the verdict. Justice has been served for Jonathan after 11 long years. While nothing can bring back my son, I'm grateful that his killer will be held accountable and that the corruption network has been exposed and dismantled. Detective Harrison felt deep satisfaction that the investigation had achieved justice for Jonathan and his family. The wallet discovery that began the case had ultimately resulted in convictions of all major network members and comprehensive reforms in Phoenix government oversight procedures. U.S. Attorney Williams announced that trials for the remaining defendants would begin in January 2008, with Webb's testimony being crucial evidence against his co-conspirators. The corruption scandal had fundamentally changed Phoenix government and business practices, with new oversight procedures implemented to prevent similar networks from operating in the future. Jonathan Sterling's death had ultimately protected future victims from corruption and violence, ensuring that his legacy of integrity would continue protecting the community for years to come. On November 20, 2007, Judge Margaret Foster sentenced Marcus Webb to life imprisonment without possibility of parole for the murder of Jonathan Sterling. Additional sentences for conspiracy and money laundering added 60 years to Webb's punishment, ensuring he would never be released from federal prison. Before imposing the sentence, Judge Foster addressed Webb directly with stern words that echoed throughout the packed courtroom. "Mr. Webb, you killed a 19-year-old young man to protect your criminal enterprise and personal financial interests. Your actions destroyed a family and corrupted the democratic process in Phoenix for nearly a decade. Society requires that you spend the remainder of your life in federal prison as punishment for these heinous crimes." Richard Sterling spoke at the sentencing hearing, delivering a powerful victim impact statement about Jonathan's life and the family's 11 years of uncertainty and grief. "Jonathan was stolen from us when he had his entire life ahead of him," Richard said, his voice strong despite his obvious emotion. "Marcus Webb didn't just kill my son. He stole Jonathan's future contributions to society and left our family without closure for over a decade. Jonathan's integrity ultimately exposed this corruption, but we will never recover what was taken from us." Webb apologized to the Sterling family before sentencing, though his words seemed hollow after years of lies and deception. "I cannot adequately express my remorse for Jonathan's death and the immeasurable pain I caused his family," Webb said. "My actions were completely inexcusable, and I accept full responsibility for all the consequences of my crimes." Detective Harrison attended the sentencing hearing, reflecting on the investigation that began with Maria Gonzalez's discovery of a wallet behind hotel furniture. The case had consumed 10 months of intensive investigation and exposed the largest corruption scandal in Arizona history. Following Webb's sentencing, trials began for his co-conspirators throughout 2008. Detective Captain Frank Morrison was the first to face trial in January 2008, charged with conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice for his role in protecting the corruption network. Morrison's trial revealed the shocking extent to which law enforcement had been compromised by the criminal network. FBI agent Rodriguez testified about evidence found in Morrison's home that proved his active participation in covering up crimes. Captain Morrison maintained unauthorized copies of investigation files that should have remained at police headquarters, Agent Rodriguez testified. He used these files to monitor investigations that might threaten network members and actively misdirected detective work away from promising leads. Prosecutor Williams presented evidence showing Morrison had received $85,000 from Webb over 4 years, with payments increasing after Jonathan's disappearance. Captain Morrison wasn't just a corrupt officer taking bribes, Williams argued. He was an active member of a criminal organization that committed murder to protect its financial interests. Morrison's defense attorney argued that his client was unaware of Jonathan's murder and believed he was only protecting business associates from unfair prosecution. The strategy failed when Webb testified about Morrison's direct role in covering up the homicide. "Frank Morrison knew Jonathan was dead because I told him exactly what happened," Webb testified. "I called Morrison the morning after Jonathan's death and explained the entire situation. Morrison assured me that he would control the police investigation and direct it away from casino connections." Morrison was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Judge Foster noted that Morrison's betrayal of his oath as a police officer warranted the maximum sentence under federal guidelines. Sergeant Maria Holmes received a 20-year sentence after pleading guilty to conspiracy and bribery charges. Holmes admitted accepting $45,000 from Webb over 3 years, but maintained she was unaware of Jonathan's murder until Webb's confession in 2007. Detective Lieutenant Paul Sullivan received a 25-year sentence despite his cooperation with prosecutors. Sullivan's role in misdirecting the original investigation was considered particularly egregious by federal prosecutors. Councilman David Martinez received a 15-year sentence despite his extensive cooperation with prosecutors. Martinez's testimony against other network members helped secure convictions, but Judge Foster emphasized that elected officials who accept bribes deserve significant punishment to deter future corruption. Councilwoman Sharon Foster received the harshest sentence among the public officials: 22 years in federal prison. Unlike Martinez, Foster had refused to cooperate with prosecutors and continued denying her involvement despite overwhelming evidence of her guilt. Councilman Robert Hayes received an 18-year sentence after pleading guilty to bribery and conspiracy charges. Hayes provided crucial testimony about how the network operated and recruited public officials. Samuel Wade, the contractor who helped dispose of Jonathan's body, received a 12-year sentence under his plea agreement. Wade's cooperation had been essential for locating Jonathan's remains and corroborating Webb's confession about the murder. Thomas Richardson, the casino executive who facilitated money laundering through inflated contracts, received a 15-year sentence. Richardson's cooperation provided crucial evidence about how the network stole money from casino operations to fund their bribery scheme. By August 2008, all major network members had been convicted and sentenced. Additional investigations resulted in indictments against 26 other individuals who had lesser roles in the corruption scheme or had accepted smaller bribes from network members. The FBI's final report documented the network's comprehensive impact on Phoenix development from 1994 to 2002. Agent Rodriguez concluded that corruption had affected 52 development projects, resulting in over $15 million in improper benefits to network members and inflated costs to taxpayers. Detective Harrison received commendation from FBI Director Robert Mueller for his investigation of the Sterling case and his role in exposing the corruption network. Detective Harrison's thorough investigation of new evidence led to the exposure of a major criminal conspiracy and brought justice to a murder victim's family after 11 years. The commendation read, Richard Sterling established the Jonathan Sterling Memorial Scholarship at Arizona State University for students studying business ethics and criminal justice. The scholarship would ensure Jonathan's commitment to integrity would inspire future generations to fight corruption and stand up for ethical principles. Maria Gonzalez, the hotel cleaner whose discovery started the investigation, received a civic award from Phoenix Mayor Phil Gordon and a cash reward from the Sterling family. Ms. Gonzalez's attention to detail and civic responsibility helped solve a major crime and expose corruption that affected our entire community, Mayor Gordon said during the awards ceremony. Harrison reflected on the case during a 2008 interview with the Arizona Republic newspaper. This investigation proved that no case is ever truly closed until justice is served, Harrison said. Maria Gonzalez's discovery of Jonathan's wallet 11 years after his disappearance shows that truth has a way of surfacing when people remain persistent and thorough in their work. The corruption scandal resulted in significant reforms in Phoenix government operations. New oversight procedures required complete disclosure of all payments to public officials, and the city council implemented stricter conflict of interest rules for development project votes. Casino industry regulations were strengthened throughout Arizona to prevent the money laundering schemes that funded the corruption network. The Arizona Gaming Commission required enhanced financial reporting and independent auditing of casino revenues to detect skimming operations. Richard Sterling continued operating the Silver Mirage Casino Resort, but implemented comprehensive new financial controls to prevent future theft. He established an anonymous reporting system for employees to report suspicious activities without fear of retaliation. In December 2008, Harrison was promoted to detective captain and assigned to lead the Phoenix Police Department's newly created Public Corruption Unit. His success with the Sterling investigation made him the department's specialist in complex cases involving government corruption and organized crime. Webb's appeals of his conviction were unsuccessful. Federal appellate courts upheld his life sentence, ruling that the evidence of premeditated murder was overwhelming and that his cooperation with prosecutors had been adequately considered during sentencing. Jonathan Sterling was buried in a private ceremony at Desert View Memorial Park in Phoenix on April 15, 2008, 12 years after his disappearance. Richard delivered a eulogy celebrating Jonathan's integrity and commitment to ethical behavior that ultimately brought down the entire corruption network. The Sterling case became a model for investigating cold cases involving public corruption. FBI training programs used the investigation as an example of how new evidence can revive seemingly impossible cases and expose broader criminal conspiracies. Detective Harrison's career was transformed by the Sterling investigation. His methodical approach to evidence analysis and his willingness to pursue complex leads made him a respected figure in law enforcement and a consultant for other agencies facing similar corruption cases. Justice for Jonathan Sterling had been achieved, but his legacy continued through the reforms and investigations his death had inspired throughout Arizona government and law enforcement. The young man's integrity had ultimately triumphed over the corruption that killed him, protecting future generations from similar crimes. 5 years after Marcus Webb's conviction, Detective Captain Jake Harrison visited Jonathan Sterling's grave at Desert View Memorial Park on the 16th anniversary of his disappearance, September 12, 2012. The memorial stone read simply, Jonathan Michael Sterling, 1977 to 1996, a young man of integrity whose truth transformed Phoenix. Richard Sterling, now 76, continued visiting his son's grave weekly. He had aged gracefully despite the tragedy, finding renewed purpose in the foundation and scholarship programs established in Jonathan's memory. The Silver Mirage Casino Resort remained successful under his leadership, with enhanced ethical standards that became a model for the gaming industry nationwide. Detective Harrison, I want to thank you once again for never giving up on Jonathan's case, Richard said as they stood together at the graveside. Maria Gonzalez's discovery changed everything, but your investigation brought justice and exposed the truth. Harrison reflected on the case's lasting impact on Phoenix and Arizona. Mr. Sterling, Jonathan's integrity ultimately protected countless other people from corruption and violence. The reforms implemented because of his death prevent future victims and ensure better government oversight throughout the state. The Jonathan Sterling Foundation had awarded over 300 scholarships to students studying business ethics, criminal justice, and public administration. Recipients were required to complete community service projects focused on preventing corruption in government and business operations. Maria Gonzalez had retired from her cleaning position at the Silver Mirage Casino in 2011, but continued working part-time as a consultant for hotel security training programs throughout Arizona. Her attention to detail and persistence had become legendary among hospitality workers across the Southwest. Maria's discovery proves that ordinary citizens can make extraordinary differences, Harrison told a 2012 conference of law enforcement investigators. Her willingness to report suspicious evidence resulted in solving a major crime and exposing widespread corruption that affected an entire metropolitan area. The corruption network prosecutions had lasting effects on Phoenix government operations. New city council procedures required public disclosure of all financial relationships between members and development projects. Electronic voting systems created permanent records of all council decisions for future audit purposes. Police department reforms implemented after the Morrison, Holmes, and Sullivan convictions included mandatory financial disclosure for all officers, enhanced internal affairs investigations, and citizen oversight of major cases. Harrison served on the reform committee that designed these new procedures. FBI Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez, promoted to Assistant Director of the Phoenix Field Office, continued investigating organized crime and corruption cases throughout the Southwest. The techniques developed during the Sterling investigation became standard procedures for complex financial crime prosecutions nationwide. The Sterling case taught us that corruption networks often rely on violence to protect their criminal activities, Rodriguez explained to a 2012 FBI training conference. Investigating financial crimes requires careful consideration of potential homicides committed to prevent exposure of criminal activities. Marcus Webb died in federal prison in January 2014, serving only 7 years of his life sentence. Prison officials reported that Webb had suffered from severe depression and health problems related to his incarceration. He left no family and was buried in a prison cemetery without ceremony. Samuel Wade completed his 12-year sentence in 2019 and returned to Phoenix, where he worked as a construction supervisor for legitimate companies. Wade had cooperated fully with prosecutors and expressed genuine remorse for his role in disposing of Jonathan's body. Detective Captain Frank Morrison died in federal prison in 2015 after suffering a massive heart attack. His conviction had destroyed his law enforcement career and pension benefits, leaving his family in severe financial difficulty. Morrison's death was noted in police department newsletters as a cautionary tale about the consequences of corruption. Councilman David Martinez completed his 15-year sentence in 2020 and returned to Phoenix, where he worked as a consultant for government ethics programs. Martinez regularly spoke to civic groups about the dangers of political corruption and the importance of ethical leadership in public service. Councilwoman Sharon Foster remained in federal prison, serving her 22-year sentence at a facility in California. Foster's refusal to cooperate with prosecutors and her continued denial of guilt resulted in her receiving no sentence reductions for good behavior. Detective Harrison retired from the Phoenix Police Department in 2020 after 32 years of service. His final assignment was developing cold case investigation protocols based on techniques used in the Sterling case. Harrison's procedures were adopted by police departments throughout Arizona and neighboring states. The Silver Mirage Casino Resort implemented the gaming industry's most comprehensive ethics program, requiring annual training for all employees and anonymous reporting systems for suspicious activities. Richard Sterling's leadership in casino ethics became a model for the industry nationwide. Harrison established a private investigation consultancy specializing in cold cases and corruption investigations. His expertise in financial crime investigation and his success with the Sterling case made him a sought-after consultant for law enforcement agencies and private attorneys throughout the Southwest. Richard Sterling published a memoir in 2018 titled Finding Jonathan, A Father's Quest for Justice in the Desert, which became a bestseller and was adapted into a documentary film. The book detailed the 11-year search for Jonathan and the investigation that exposed the corruption network. The memoir's proceeds funded expansion of the Jonathan Sterling Foundation Scholarship Program to include students nationwide studying ethics and criminal justice. The foundation also sponsored research into preventing corruption in local government operations. Maria Gonzalez was featured prominently in the documentary about the Sterling case, explaining how her routine cleaning duties led to the discovery that solved a major crime and exposed widespread corruption. "I was just doing my job, but when I found that wallet, I knew it was important," Gonzalez explained in the documentary. Everyone has a responsibility to report evidence of crimes, even if it seems small or unimportant at the time. The Arizona Gaming Commission established the Jonathan Sterling Award for Ethical Gaming Operations, presented annually to casino operators who demonstrate exceptional commitment to preventing corruption and money laundering. Richard Sterling presented the first award in 2019. Harrison's investigation techniques were incorporated into FBI training programs for investigating organized crime and public corruption throughout the United States. The systematic approach to analyzing financial records and the emphasis on protecting cooperating witnesses became standard procedures for federal agents. Jonathan's legacy extended beyond Phoenix through academic programs studying the case nationwide. Universities used the Sterling investigation as a case study in business ethics courses, demonstrating how individual integrity can expose systemic corruption despite enormous personal risk. In 2021, the Phoenix City Council unanimously approved renaming a portion of Central Avenue near the Silver Mirage Casino as Jonathan Sterling Memorial Boulevard. The street dedication ceremony was attended by hundreds of people, including many who had worked on the investigation and prosecution. Richard Sterling, now 84, delivered remarks at the street dedication ceremony. Jonathan believed in doing the right thing regardless of personal cost or consequences. This memorial ensures that future generations will remember his commitment to integrity and the importance of fighting corruption wherever it exists. Detective Harrison served as master of ceremonies for the dedication, reflecting on the case's significance for Phoenix and Arizona. Jonathan Sterling's murder led to the largest corruption investigation in Arizona history, Harrison said. His death, while tragic, ultimately protected our community from criminals who exploited public trust for personal gain for nearly a decade. The street dedication marked the culmination of formal commemoration for Jonathan's life and legacy. His story had become part of Phoenix history, teaching important lessons about integrity, corruption, and the pursuit of justice that would resonate for generations. Maria Gonzalez, now 82, attended the dedication ceremony and was recognized for her crucial role in solving the case. Her discovery of Jonathan's wallet remained one of the most significant pieces of evidence in Arizona criminal history. Harrison concluded his remarks at the dedication with words that captured the case's enduring significance. This case proves that justice may be delayed, but it cannot be permanently denied when people of integrity stand up for what is right, Harrison said. Jonathan Sterling's commitment to ethical behavior triumphed over the corruption that killed him, and his legacy continues protecting our community from similar crimes. Jonathan Michael Sterling's murder had been solved, his killers convicted, and his memory honored through lasting reforms that protected Phoenix from future corruption. After 25 years, his story remained a powerful example of how individual courage and integrity could overcome criminal conspiracies and achieve justice, even when the odds seemed impossible. The young man's commitment to doing the right thing had ultimately protected countless future victims from corruption and violence, ensuring that his legacy would continue inspiring others to stand up for ethical principles and moral courage in the face of adversity.